Well, good morning, everyone. Um, I didn't sleep very well, so we're not going to be doing a music stream, at least to start with, while I wake up. So, what we're going to do instead is a Reaktor stream. Working on the project I was working on yesterday, making sure that's working as well as it can. Um, well, not as well as it can, but we're going to make progress with that and try and get that further down the line to working fully. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. So, we're going to jump straight back into the Reaktor plugin. And this is where we got to yesterday, or very nearly. And the first thing I'd like to do to improve our nascent system, shall I say, is to put in a control for our feedback. So the only thing I've done differently, I think, is I've put in a high pass filter, the actual knob for the high pass filter. And I might have moved things around just slightly, but I don't think much. And with the feedback, I have this funny sort of principle. It's based upon a Reaktor delay, actually, that it's really nice if you can get the feedback to go just a bit beyond one. But the most intelligent way to do it is to actually have two knobs. So you set the feedback on one knob to about, say, for a really long delay, you set it for about 75%. And then you have another knob, which you can take it up and over 100%. Which means it's really easy to then just kill that knob and have your long tail. So it's a lot easier to automate. I find it easier to work with. So what that means is I need to put in a receive terminal here and replace my 0.5, my sort of prank value, as I call it. I'll delete that, and I'm going to call. I won't set that up yet. There's no point. And we'll jump into here, which is our. If I call this GUI, then that's going to make that a lot clearer. So, I can reorganize these a bit. Try and get some semblance of order. And on the panel, I want a knob. In fact, I want two knobs. And I'll call one feedback. And apparently this morning I can't type. And I'm going to call the other one boost. In fact, I'm going to cut both of those. I'm going to put them in a macro so they have their own little area. Cut selection, new macro. I'll drop them in. I'm going to add these two signals together. And what's going to be nice is if these are in percentages. So I'm going to change that to 100. I'm going to put that as 50. And then I need to multiply that by 0.01. So that will take it from percentages down to the actual sort of scale range that I need. And then from there, I'm just going to put a send channel out, and I'll rename that. I'm going to call that FB. So now jumping back into the audio process, this receive here, I'm going to connect on and connect it into FB. Fantastic. Let's see how that's working. I'll save it now. First of all, I'll just sort out the panel. So feedback can go over there. And again, we're not working on the feedback at all at the moment. We're just sort of we're not working on the panel at all. We're just making sure that our process, the maths of this, is correct. That's all good. So 100%. And you can hear the filters actually fading out the signal to a degree. That should now be pretty much, yeah. And you can hear something very interesting occurring there, which is the part phasing against itself. And we're going to try and deal with that to some degree. That's a real dub delay. Okay, so now I'm going to try increasing the gain up beyond 100%. And this is part of why I put in a filter with a saturator in it. You can hear the saturator doing its thing now. Nice. I think we have a winner. I'm happy with that. I don't need to change that at all. That's working exactly how I want it to. So now is where we're going to get slightly experimental. What I said yesterday, because basically I now have a fully functioning, apart from the panel, forget the panel. Apart from that, I now have a fully functioning true stereo delay. But what I would like to do is two things. And one of them is going to be slightly easier than the other ones. One of them is, you may have heard that under certain circumstances, and let's try and get that going again. I'll leave boost all the way down. That this kind of rings in a bad way, like a shit reverb. So the next time it comes in, that's not so good, because that's fundamentally changing the harmonic character of the signal we're putting in. And what I need to do is simulate something you get on tape delays, which is called flutter. And to do that, I'm going to put in an oscillator. And this is actually isn't correct. This should be cyclical. But to do that, I need a specific waveform, which is going to be difficult to get hold of straight away. So I'm just going to use a random waveform, which will be similar to what I want it to do. We're going to go at 0.1 Hertz, and I'm going to set the amplitude to about 5 to start with. And remember, the reason for that is that means that it will produce a number between 5 and -5. And we set the delay time in milliseconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modulate the delay time by just a few milliseconds and slowly change that. And that will mean that we don't get that phasing effect that we were hearing before, in theory at least. So I'll put that. I use math. I'm going to add. Just going to give myself a little bit of space to work in. So before I move everything around, well, no, I can move that up there. This is really bad program for people with OCD. Not that I have OCD, but you get the idea. Maybe slightly I have OCD. There we go. I'm happy with that now. Let's see how that sounds and whether that works correctly. And then to control the amount of variation, I'm going to modulate this here. I'm going to change the scale of the random waveform I've just put in. But for now, let's see how that sounds. So this should not do the same thing again. So next time, see, now it isn't. If anything, it's almost a bit much. And the other thing to say is, because I've done this clever thing where I've got a stereo signal going through one wire. What I need to do here is make this monophonic. So, because in a real life situation, well, I guess it depends. If we're trying to emulate Flutter on a tape, then it would be a monophonic modulation. You'd only have one modulation source and it would modulate both sides of the stereo in exactly the same way. What's happening here is it's seeing that I'm running two voices and it's putting a different random signal on each voice. So that's like our tape is crinkling in an impossible manner. So if I make this these two mono, then I'll get the same modulation on each side. And what it's doing is making quite a nice stereo effect, but it wouldn't be right to call that Flutter. So I'm simply going to make that mono, and I'm going to make that mono as well, which it doesn't like. That's fine. I need to jump around to the panel. And the reason it doesn't like it is because I've got some maths going on the delay time. In fact, what's going to be better I'll keep that one polyphonic because I'm going to want there's situations where I want the time setting to be polyphonic too. But what I'll do here is I'll in fact that should work now, I think, because that's fine. Save that. Let's check it. So we'll call that the first time. Perfect, that's working perfectly. And I can control the amount of, we're going to call that Flutter. Even though it isn't really, kind of is. And we can make that more pronounced and all that kind of thing. But I'm going to want a terminal for that, so I'm going to get a receive port. And connect that into amplitude. Jump to new. Jump into the GUI. On the panel, I'm going to make a knob. And I'm going to call that Flutter. And then terminal send. Flutter. And again, I'm going to do a little bit of maths. So the knob has got a nice 100%. And I'm going to make that. If I make it 20 milliseconds, and that's loads, I think that'll become quite apparent at that point. So we could also control the flutter speed as well. I want to times by 0.02. No, 0.2. There we go. So 0 to 100, I'm multiplying it now by 0.2, and that will take it down to a signal which is 0 to 20, which will be 20 milliseconds either way. I jump to the panel and move the knob to a position where it's okay for me to put in more stuff. So Flutter again, and I'm not controlling layout at all at this point. Let's have a little check on that. Of course, and the process isn't receiving yet. I have to jump around to this receive knob, otherwise it doesn't know where to get it, and it wants to take the Flutter signal. That needs to be mono, and I think that will work now. Yeah, it looks good. You can hear that's quite a lot of Flutter. So let's increase the speed of our random signal because that was too slow, I would say. Let's make that 1 hertz. So this now sounds like a really shonky motor in our. And at that point, it's doing exactly what I want it to do. I'm just going to kill the signal a bit. Might look at the scaling of these knobs again, it's a bit extreme still. Basically, I call that a broken delay. So that's a kind of flutter effect. And honestly, it'll probably be cyclic. What you probably have in a tape machine is that you get a little patch on a cog which is worn and it couldn't drive it properly or something like that. Or where the tape is sellotaped together, essentially taped together, probably not sellotaped together, you get a little as it tried to drive it across the motor. So you'd actually have a repeated pattern. But for our purposes, for now at least, that's going to be plenty. That's a lot of flutter. Probably too much flutter. But it's fine. So I'll stop that again for now. So we got some flutter on our tape, which stops it phasing in a manner we don't want it to phase when our feedback occurs, so we don't get harmonic ringing. The other thing we could do is invert the feedback. But to do that, well, no, I think actually we'll just invert the feedback here. And the best way of doing that will be to have a switch. Which I don't like using, but there we are. So I'm going to make a switch here, and it's going to have 2 ports. One of which is going to be like a straight through, and the other one, built-in module, math, invert. And this just flips whatever I'm running through it by -1. And then that will now feed back to the input. And let's work with our switch. The reason I don't like switches is because they're a panel element, and this is not a panel. This is not a panel element. This is our audio process, which means that I have to do some stuff to make that work as I want it to. It's not a big deal, but I need to set up internal connections on here. So I'm going to call this invert. And then I'm going to jump into GUI. I'm going to put a switch in here. And I'm going to call this invert 2. I want this to always be active. Got 2 ports. And there we go. So that now is controlled by a different inverter. And in view, I don't want that one to be visible at all. So let's jump into our GUI. I'm going to call this one. I can never remember how this works. Just to make things easier for me, I'm going to control this and get the values out of this in a funny way. Because I want just a little button that just says invert, and I can never remember whether it's when you press the button it selects the first one or the second one on the list. So if I take a numeric readout, then I'll be able to see what I'm doing much more effectively. And I'd like it to be that one, not that it really matters. And this is just me getting values out of the thing. It's never actually going to get the value from here. This is just a switch controlling another switch. So jumping into the panel. And switch is starting off. Nothing is selected. So if I click 1, it goes to 1. And if I click the bottom one, it goes to 0. The view. I like a button, I like a 1 toggle. And it is the first one it takes. So, GUI, I'm going to call that one invert. And that means that in the audio, so it's the top one it takes, which means that this needs to go in there. And that needs to go in there. Let's check whether that works. It's going to be a little bit sketchy finding out, but hopefully we'll give it a go. Oh, look at that, it crashed. Google Chrome ran out of memory. Wow. Interesting. I don't think so. That's a little annoying. Okay. Let's see if I can figure out how to sort this out. You gonna let me reload? Okay, I think we're back in business now. That was a little annoying. Yeah, all good. Okay. Where was I? That completely threw me. So yeah, I was checking out the whether that was working correctly or not. So I wanted to get rid of a couple of elements of the panel, specifically that one. And that is always active. Okay, let's have a listen. I'm going to chuck the feedback up. That is working. And you can hear because it changes on the second time through. Okay, good. So that seems to be working. Although it doesn't have a lot of effect, but I wouldn't expect it to be honest. And the next thing I wanted to do, that will only be useful in very specific circumstances, but it's nice to have it and it doesn't really cost us any power. The next thing I want to do is play with this diffuser delay and get this working, which is going to be interesting. Now, the reason I want to do this is this will allow us to phase rotate the signal, and it'll also allow us to smear the signal over time a little bit, called diffusion, essentially. And we can get the signal started straight away, just like that. And we're going to want to be able to control the signal. So I definitely am going to need a couple of receives. And I'm probably going to want to mix this signal in rather than sort of have it quite so, rather than have it on all the time. But for now at least, we'll just get going like this. I'm going to go to my GUI section. And put a couple of sends in. One I'm going to call size. And the next one I'm going to call rotation. And this one is going to be slightly complicated in that, well, no, we'll deal with it just like this for now. So I need two knobs, and we'll get to the complication later. Two knobs. One is size. This goes, I don't really want more than about 20 milliseconds on this. That's quite a lot, I would say. And then this one here, I'm going to have another knob, and this one needs to go from 0 to 1, and probably we're going to want that to be around, no, I think probably actually, but most of the time we're going to be around 0.5, so I'm probably going to scale that knob. I'll jump to the panel, unlock, and get these working a bit better. So this is size. Ooh, sorry about that. And this is rotation. I'm just going to leave the rotation at 0.5. Let's have a listen to how that sounds. And of course, that's not connected in because I haven't set up the receives. So off, I want to connect that to size, and this one I want to connect to rotation. So immediately you can hear what that's doing, which is just throwing the whole thing out there. Okay. And another thing we could try would be to give ourselves a subtle stereo effect. Would be if we had a different if we change one of these, particularly the diffusion I'm thinking of here, if we change that for each different channel left and right, And to do that, the rotation, as I've called it, we're going to use a couple of our two voices, and that's all we're going to need. We're not going to need to take this signal out. We're just going to need to duplicate that out. I set a couple of constants. That's fine on one. That's fine on two. And again with math, I'm just going to invert one of our channels. And I'm also going to make this knob go to -1. Then I add these two signals together, but because they're in different parts of our voice structure polyphonically, that will be just fine. That will work perfectly. I don't really want more than 5 milliseconds. I guess 5 milliseconds every time through in terms of having a believable signal. And that's really nice. I like that. The other thing I'm going to do is this slow random waveform. I'm going to put a little bit of that into the delay time there. So I'm going to times this let's say we'll put it in 10%, so that'll be not much at all. Create constant. I'll multiply that by 0.1. And I'm going to add that. And that should help get rid of some of the ringing. I think maybe even less. That's pretty interesting as an effect. Okay, I'm happy with how that's working. And but it's not necessarily something that I want on all the time, and it's not necessarily I want 100% of. So I'm going to move that down as well. I think I can make the layout slightly clearer by doing that. I can move all of that down. I'm going to rename these as well because it's not very clear what's going on with that. Rotation, flutter, and size. So what I want to do is have some kind of mixing ability. And for that I need a signal path. I need to go for a selector scanner. It's going to be 2 ports. And then the output from that needs to go once into there and once into there. And that's all cool. And obviously I need a control for that, which is going to be, again, a receive, which goes in there. And I'm going to call that diffusion. We'll set all this up. Send. So this is our mix knob. We'll make the readout easy. Constant. A little bit of multiplication. I'll sling that over there so it's in the right place. So really I should make a macro for that and then call that mix. And obviously I need to make sure that that is correct in the audio process because that's not connected. There we go. It's working. That's fine. So panel. See, I'm just starting to thinking about the GUI now. All of these I can cut and paste. Now I can call this mix instead. And call this diffusion. Which is going to be a lot easier to work with. And I'll check I haven't screwed that up. But I don't need to reconnect everything. Because I might well. And I think I do. So when I did that, the audio process lost all its connections. So I'll reconnect that all in. And that should work now. Fantastic. So now we have a true stereo delay with a diffusion section, a really nice low pass filter which will saturate a signal which we can make into a huge, great big wobbly dub delay, and a 2-pole filter. This is kind of all I want for a stereo delay, if that makes sense. Not a ping pong delay, just a straight stereo delay where I set it one time. This will do literally everything that I want it to do. One thing I don't like is the scaling on these knobs. And what I'm going to do about that is jump into the GUI here. I'm going to multiply this signal by itself. No, I'm going to have to be a little bit cuter than that. 136.7. So I'll make that 1 and then. So knob scaling is always a tough one, essentially. Going to throw them off over there and delete that wire. Delete these wires. At the moment, I don't need them. I'm going to multiply the signal by itself. So I'm doing multiplication between 0 and 1 and then multiplying that signal by 0 and 1. So instead of a knob doing that, now when the knob reaches 0.5, it will multiply 0.5 by 0.5. But instead, 0.5 times 0.5 is 0.25, so it'll be further down. So you might think, well, you're making that worse at this point. Why would you want to do that? Well, quite simply, I'm going to add that signal to the signal I've already got out of the knob. And then at the end, I'm going to multiply by 0.5. So follow that if you can. This will change the shape of the knob, but will not change the range because we're working between 0 and 1. So knob goes to 0 and 1. That's linear. That's fine. And this knob now also goes to 0 and 1. It's not linear, but it goes between 0 and 1. So, and then I times it by 2. So the knob fully to the right is quite clearly going to be 1, and the knob fully to the left is quite clearly going to be 0. So there's no real difference. It's just the speed that we get to it is different. And all of them needs to be mono. And I'll chase that back through everything. And then that disappears off the output. So let's have a look at what that did. Oh, of course, then I need to multiply that at this end. Before that goes into pitch, I need to multiply it by 136.7 to get my scaling for MIDI back. There we go. I've actually made it worse. But the principle is sound. So if I invert the signal here, well, that's very interesting. What have I done wrong? This is where I have to do a bit of thinking. Ooh. Let me get a numeric readout on that. I have to throw the signal around and see if I can get a what I'm after out of it. No, that's not going to do it. Used to be so easy. Or I could use a control point break. That would probably be a lot easier, wouldn't it? Yeah, why don't we try that? Reaktor coming with these amazing tools, which I'm just determinedly avoiding at this point. So info. And I'm going to make that 0.75. The start and end point I don't really want to modify. And if I need more than this, I can use a different control shaper. Let's check that out on here. That looks a lot better. And that seems like quite a sensible point to have the cutoff at. Maybe a little bit lower. Call it 0.6. Oh. What did I do there? Okay, I'm pretty happy with that scaling now. So I'm going to copy that box and duplicate it. Get rid of that. Edit. Undo. I just wanted to get rid of that wire. Delete. Move that down. Just this out of the way. And I'm going to do the same thing exactly with the high pass cut. Copy. Paste. That goes in there, and that goes in there. I'll sort this out a little bit, stop it being a spaghetti junction. So that sorted out the scaling on my filter knobs on the panel. That's much better. Wow. Apart from the fact that I didn't change the scaling of the knob. knob. So this is now the filter set super high. That goes to 1. And what I'm going to do, I don't actually like the effect the rotation is having, so I'm going to get rid of one of these rotations is inverted. I think I did it in the GUI. Yeah, I did. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to shove that out there. I'm happier with that now. Let's try a bit of boost again. And my saturator in the SVF is doing a fantastic job. Weird. But if I turn all this off, it just turns into a regular feedback. without too much trouble at all. This be just wet now. Oh no, what have I done? Right, there's a problem with the mix. How did I not notice that? Oh, of course. There we go. It's working perfectly. Okay, so I'll save that. That seems like a good point for me to get a cup of tea. And then we'll make sure that we'll get the interface working a little bit better. Time is going to be a tricky one because I want to make that work differently with different plugins, if that makes sense. So when we get on to the next plugin, well, not the next plugin, but the next part of this plugin, I'm going to have different times for the left and the right channel. That gets a little more complicated. Okay. What we didn't do was, well, no, I wouldn't on this plugin. It's not necessary. We didn't do cross feedback. I think on the next plugin, which still won't be a ping pong delay, but it's going to be a mono delay on each channel. I think it would be nice if we had the ability to do a little bit of cross feedback. The other thing I'm thinking about doing on the audio process, but probably a separate audio process, so it'll be like an output, it'll be universal for all of them, is having, and that probably also means that my mix is in the wrong place. Would be having an EQ on there of some sort. I'll have to think about that. That's going to take a little time. I'm going to take a couple of minutes. That's an hour I've been going for, so I'll take a couple of minutes, reset myself, get a cup of tea, that sort of thing. So I'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so what I think is definitely the case is that I'm going to want to EQ the channel. And I'm not going to want to EQ the dry signal, which means I think I have that this mix is actually in the wrong place in our signal, which is annoying. But there we go. So I'm just going to cut that. I want all of those. I'm going to cut them. Cut selection. Woo. And from that selector, I'm going to go to the output. And from there, I'm going to paste this in. That mix sort of disconnected itself. Oh no, that's fine. That's all good. It's still there. And I'm trying to think where I want this. So effectively, I'm calling this my stereo delay now. I'm going to have more than one of these. And then I'll duplicate this and have a ping pong delay and whatever other sort of delay down here. And then there'll be a switch, which is effectively going to be mode. Where I pick my different delays. So for now, I'll just plug that in. I'll move that out. And I'll mix between them here. So I want my EQ here. Is the way I'm starting to see this working. I really want them out of the way. That's bothering me. Okay, so that's going to go in up here. That's going to be where the voices come from. That selector. I only, of course. Oh no, that'll be fine. That'll be fine. And I'll build in. Bang. Not from there. I take it from here. Terminal output. Terminal input. Okay, so let's get the EQ working. And I don't need to use crazy good EQs in here. I just need to use what I really want is a high and low shelf. I think that will be super helpful. And I like probably a couple of peak EQs. I don't think I'll need any more than that. Where am I looking? Filter. There we go. I want another peak EQ. I could have just hit duplicate. The one thing I don't like about the high shelves is that they don't have a width control on them, which is a bit of a letdown, I would say. Even then, no. Delete. Okay, so that's going to be our structure, and that at the moment shouldn't be doing anything. So let's listen to that and make sure I haven't screwed anything up. That's going to be our mode switch, and that needs to be on that one. Okay, so that's all working. That's fantastic. Save that. Let's jump back into the EQ and get some controls going on here. So I'm going to want... And is that in MIDI pitch? Yeah, that's in MIDI pitch. So again, we're going to go knob. And these are going to be like the other knobs we made. And in fact, I'm going to copy the structure of that because I quite like the scaling on them. It felt okay. That's fine, I'll leave that there. But for the GUI section, I'm going to copy that. And the EQ isn't going to be a complex structure, so there's no need for me to separate out the GUI elements and the audio process elements, because I'm only ever going to have these 4 processes, so it's simpler just to run it in place on this one, I feel. I'll duplicate that, and it can be just as effective for our high shelf. In fact, I'll call that high freak. And that can be low freak. This I'm going to make this can also be a knob, and that can be low gain, and that can run from, I think that's quite ambitious, plus and minus 20 dB. We'll make that a 12. That's still an awful lot of gain. Copy, paste, make that high gain. Duplicate. That's going to be week 1 freak. We have to change the name of that one. I will duplicate again. Yeah, that's fine. Peak 2 freak. Let's get those knobs. That's a tangled mess. So let's get that sort of under control. That's going on that side. 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 So all the frequencies together, peak 1, frequency, peak 2 frequency, then the high frequency, then we'll put the gain beneath that. That's roughly right. Jump back in. Then we'll go, just quickly create controls for these. Q1, make that capital. Q1. Gain 1. Adjust the range on that one again. 12 minus 12. Duplicate those because I want exactly the same thing over here. Q2. Gain 2. Fantastic. And on the panel, again, it's a mess. Gain 2 is going there. Q2 is going there. Gain 1 is going there. That's right, that's better. And then Q1 is going there. Let's move the whole panel. Just starting to come together. Okay, so let's see how that actually sounds now. Save. And I need to modulate all of these by 136. That's a bit of a pain. Never mind. Math multiply. Constant 136.7. Duplicate. Paste. It's not that bad, just take a second or two. Paste. So the readouts are still going to be wrong, but the sound will be right now. Cool. That's a working EQ unit. That's going to be super useful so that we can use that to really shape up our sound. In more subtle ways. I wonder if it needs just slightly more slightly more flutter getting into our diffuser delay. It seems a little bit timid to me. I can still hear harmonic ringing. Whereas that's clearly too much. That seems to be doing a pretty good job now. Yeah. I can go with that. And you might be wondering why I'm using a clap to do this. It's because it's got a large number of frequencies in it. It's a pretty good signal for testing that out. It's not too bad to listen to either. It's such a repetitive element. Weird. Okay. Let's continue working on this to get this slightly better looking. And for this delay, because it's the simplest delay and the more complicated delays need to use the same amount of space, we're going to have to leave room, which is why I'm not really too fussed about how this one looks. I am interested in what that numeric display is, though, that's just sort of randomly in there. That one. Delete. There we go, that's better. So I'm not going to work too much on how that looks. And the thing to do now is to get into the next I can't think what it's called. The next delay. There we go. So I'm going to copy this and then paste that. And this is effectively going to be a dual mono delay. No, in fact, I'm going to call that dual delay. I'm not sure dual mono delay would be. That's actually more like what we got above. I'm just going to call this dual delay. I'll move these so that layout is a little clearer. I think that's better. And the big trick here is that our delay time, in fact, the only real difference between this and the above one is that delay time on each channel is going to be different. And in addition to that, we could also have some cross feedback between the two channels. So this is going to end up doing something quite similar to a Roland space echo. So essentially, this is going to have an entire another one of these. Copy selection and then paste. Oh, I need to be careful. New macro. I'll delete them out for a second because at this point I now need. Oh, that's a bit of a big mistake I've made. Copy. We might have some bits of we might have some rewiring to do. It's not too bad. Paste. I'm going to get rid of all that. I did not mean to do that. Edit. Undo duplicate. All of you. Delete. Save. I've got to do it. So now my question is, do any of the knobs still work? Probably not. No, of course not. So let's reconnect all the knobs. Stereo delay. And I'm going to call this. In we go. Thank you. Stereo delay. I've made worse mistakes than that. All I have to do is go in and reconnect everything. It's not an absolute shocker. It's just a bit of a pain in the ass. Time. IP cut. Diffusion. Size. Feedback. Rotation. I think that's everything. Cool, so this should work again now. Ooh, cancel. Save. Why you no work? This will be something silly that I've missed. Jump into the GUI, make sure that's working correctly. Always active. Mono. Let's enable wire debugging. Interesting. I kind of feel like that should be working. I am confused. Let's see where I've screwed this up. I think the problem is in there. So that works. I'm not sure what I've done. Let's try deleting something and see if I can make this work. Receive. Going to delete it out of the channel and see if reloading it helps. I genuinely don't know what I've done here. As far as I'm concerned, that should be working. Scratch pad. I wonder if that's anything to do with it. No. It is. That's definitely polyphonic. That should be polyphonic too. Well, at this point, I'm confused. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. So when I've figured out what I've done wrong with this, I will come back, explain it, and we'll go from there again. How's that? The only other thing I wonder is that. No, because I'm all the way over on mixes too, so it's definitely going through the delay, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of instructions reaching anything. I'll figure it out. Apologies for that. I'm sure I'll figure it out and sort it out. I'm not sure what I've done, but until then, take it easy. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.